It's very strange. It's totally black.
You can't see us at all. Or can you?
Not at all.
Oh, it's pretty. You look good. Pretty.
I can't tell. Should I be looking this way?
Yeah, there are 3 cameras, so
3.
wherever you
1,
look.
2.
There's another one here in the corner. I think you.
Oh, someone came in.
Yeah, let's see.
I can
What?
check with the brake again. It's on.
3. Over there. Okay.
It's okay.
Okay, we're good to go.
Okay. Hi, my name is Paige Taul. I'm the current resident of Zaratan for the month of June. And I wanted to say a little bit about the work that will be playing before it's played. So much of my practice is about thinking about cultural signifiers, more specifically signifiers of blackness in the U.S. What are the ways in which people express identity, and how are these both inherited in veins such as religion, style, experience.
No one in my family is interconnected with any martial art or art for that matter, or anything related to the spiritual practices of martial arts. I got into it because my best friend, G-Baby, or Josh, that's his real name, Josh, but we all call him G-Baby. He is a fellow judoka, and he trained maybe 4 years prior to me. And at the time, I was like going through a lot of like mental stress and grief, because I had lost both my parents in like a 2-year span. And he was like, yeah, bro, he had just kept saying it for like 3 years, like, bro, just come down to the dojo, just come down to the dojo. And then he had always told me about like our sensei, who is like one of the highest ranking black belts on this side of America, a black man too, Sensei Hollis Barnett. And he just kept talking about him. And then one day I went in there and I sat in. And the first day I sat in, I was like, oh, I want to do this. And that's kind of how I got my introduction to judo, through a high school friend who I still talk to today. I've been knowing him since I was 15, but we still kind of see each other about 3 times a week. When you take judo, you know, you'll see like, I guess underlying, I don't want to say issues, but like the type of dynamic that you have between like the martial art itself. You'll figure out like, because first off, judo is it's a full contact martial art, and I don't know, I feel like judo can be it's interconnected with life to me. When you take it, you'll notice, because it's just like so many things you have to do before you even get to a point of fighting or practice what they call randuri. First you have to learn how to bow, then you have to learn how to fall. First you learn how to fall before you do anything, so you're constantly like going through all of these moments of like failure, but you have to know how to fall in order to throw someone, to get a ippon. It's what you get, what the referees signify as a win. My sensei is getting there in age, but his dojo is unique because he actually teaches you hands-on. When I came into the dojo, he will work through everything with me. So first I'm with sensei, and then when he feels you're ready, then he allows you to, have practice or be in class with fellow judokas. Well, the first day he asked me, he was like, you ever took a martial art before? You sure you didn't take this before? And I was like, no. But I also wrestled in high school. I played football. The movements was like, okay, not to be like, oh, I was prepping my life for this, but it felt like a lot of the movements that I had in the past had kind of geared me for judo. there's a lot of falling, a lot of throwing, it's grappling, it's wrestling, it's arm locks, it's chokes, it's all of this stuff. You know what I mean? It's very intense when you feel it, like every day after practice is like, oh, I need to ice my body, or I need to take a cool shower. You could have sprung something and you don't really know because you're going so hard, and everyone's in the dojo is kind of like you're going through these moves, you're constantly practicing this stuff to get a ippon.
As a youngster growing up, I loved wrestling. I loved wrestling. My mom used to take me to wrestling matches. And I always said, one day I want to learn how to throw. And so it was a friend of mine, making a long story short, we were all out playing one day in the area. And his name is Daryl. And Daryl reached up and grabbed this boy and threw him. And I said, man, how did you do that? He said, a Japanese friend of mine taught me that. I said, yeah, what do that? What is that called? He said, it's called judo. Judo. And judo, the word judo, you'll be surprised. It means gentle way. Gentle. Do, way. But if you was to get out there and get thrown, paid, it ain't gonna be so gentle. So I'm the head instructor here. But I don't do much of teaching now. I'm the overseer. I'm like the pastor of the church. I just make sure that things are going correctly, but I got some good assistants. We've been here since 97. Yes. So we're the oldest school in Chicago, martial arts. This is the oldest, Jiu-Jitsu Institute. Well, the population of blacks are large is in the fighting arts, karate, taekwondo, those arts. But in judo, we're grappling. And the reason it's been asked of me many times, Sensei, why we don't see many blacks in judo? I said there's one particular reason. It's too physical. It's too physical. Hard. Yeah. Grappling is when you throw. You get thrown and slammed. A lot of people can't take that page. Because you know that old saying, what goes up must what?
Come down.
Come down. And when you come down, you're going to hit the ground. But we're here, we teach you how to fall. It's how to take a fall. You'll need to learn how to use your weapons on the streets in all reality. See, these are your weapons. If I ask you how many weapons you got on you right now, you think you tell me? Your feet, 2. Your knees, 4. Elbows, 6. Fists, 8, 9. 7, 8. And guess what's number 9? Your head. Your head. People often ask me, Sensei, are you really going to use your head? I say, if it comes to saving your butt, you better believe it. Yeah, you better believe you learn to use your head. It's that skull. I've had the challenge of teaching students from other countries. See, because first of all, many of them, they came from like Europe and different countries. They didn't know there were no blacks teaching judo. They found out about me and came here. So I wanted them to share something when they went back home. Because I know when they went back home, the first thing their instructor is going to say is, who is your instructor? And they can proudly say, it was a black guy. It was a black guy. But no, what we do, we teach you how to fall, though. Because you must learn how to take a fall. Because I've had quite a bit of students sad there. I don't want to see none of my students get hurt. But I lost a bunch of them. They had to go and join another art, which is good, because all arts serve something. But there's nothing like judo.
To have a black sensei I think is very important. To me, it's the reason why I kept going back. To go to a place to see a man that kind of, feels like either my uncle or grandfather, or that's what keeps me in it. No one in my family is interconnected with any martial art.
Questions from the audience? And I can't see you if you're raising your hand, so.
Just shout. Well, maybe it would be interesting to know a bit more about how it was the process of making it, like the recording, the relation with the protagonists, and yeah, I think to start, I would like to know more about that.
So Mandela, so I had another film that I was putting up for a show with a print accompaniment, and Mandela was one of the framers at the frame shop where I had this print framed. And he approached me about the print that the print of the photograph, that I was working with, which was a scan of my father's, a Polaroid he sent while he was in prison to my mom, and so he talked about his interests in a particular kind of photography, or that as a form of photography, and one that I was also trying to explore as well. And so we started talking that way. After that original conversation, followed me on Instagram, and then I followed him back, and then I saw in one of his stories that he was wearing the training clothing. I'm looking to explore the relationship between Black people in martial arts, because this shows up in not only older films, but also in our music. So Wu-Tang Clan being one of the biggest, not the only, but definitely one of the most notable examples of this kind of sampling from culture in that way. And there's a very well-known film called Ghost Dog, The Way of the Samurai by Jim Jarmusch, that also has Forrest Whitaker as a very famous black actor, as a sort of contemporary carryover from the films of the 70s. And so he also was familiar with this film, and we talked about that, and I asked him to be in an interview. And so that was the clip you hear is an excerpt from about a 25-minute recorded conversation, which was part of a longer, hour-long conversation where some of it was or wasn't on my phone. And so that's where that happened. And then as far as the imagery, he disappeared after the initial interview. He stopped answering my messages, and then I couldn't find him at the framing place, and then eventually he said he couldn't participate any further. Didn't provide much reason after that, but that's one of the biggest reasons, or that is the reason why he's not visible in the work, because the plan was to initially have him in the studio also. So I had to compensate for his lack of physical form in it, even though he is there in audio. So that's how that came together. And then the footage in the first half is a demonstration video. It's scanned archival imagery of a demonstration given by the person who, I don't know if he invented, but he definitely innovated the form of judo. So Jigoro Kano and an unnamed student with him, but yeah.
And I'm curious, you were mentioning you recorded the voice with your phone, and then the footage of the image would be in a different time. Is it like it is a part of your process. You divide completely the moment when you film the image and when you record the voice, or was it a chance in this case? Because also for me it's interesting here how you really connect the voice of the of Ollie to the image, but there is no moment where the voice is matching the actual interview. So I was curious about that.
I think part of something I grapple with, not struggle, but grapple with, is the like evidence of the tools, like in the work itself. So, or evidence of presence, or my presence in the work. And I know that I was asked previously about the use of handheld camera work. I think I don't want a self-conscious interview, not in that he can't feel self-conscious about talking about himself, or very personal subjects related to the practice of judo, but I don't know if, I think at some point it maybe becomes too cheeky if every sort of interview or text or imagery is like aware of itself. I do, in the original interview, you can hear me asking the questions, and then even certain responses he had are it's very obvious he's talking to someone, but I think there's something, it changes the dynamic that he can have, or that the voice can have, or that can happen between the audience and the interview. I think it leaves more space for not necessarily listening or even relation, but leaves more space for like opportunity to build a relationship between the audience and the interviewee. So I think that's maybe how I'm thinking about your question, or was it about something else?
No,
I
think you replied fine. Something that maybe is still obscure to me is it's just an issue of how you editing and how you construct the final film, or is also related to the technique, to the fact that you want to film with a camera and then in separate recording the audio. I was curious about that.
It was something that we also discussed in previously. Maybe the sound of the voice and the image being sort of out of sync at moments, but coincide at other points, and that link being your sort of artistic method as well. Would you share about? I don't know if that's
as far as asynchronous sound, I want to be able to treat sound as I want it to have as much attention, or at least I can give it as much attention with the audio as with the imagery. I think why I continue to mix, because I can have asynchronous sound with the digital image, but I have done that. But I think why I continue to work with 16 and then add sound over that, or have it sort of exist as a separate entity, is because of the economy of storytelling. Like 16mm is not the most, it's not a cheap option, but there's something about having a craft or having a tool that has like really specific conditions. So the motor only runs a certain amount of time, and the film roll only carries a certain amount of like imagery available, which is like 2 to 3 minutes, depending on the camera and all these other factors that sort of provide like a pre-existing structure for shooting. And so I really like, and I learned on it first before I even touched the digital camera, so I really like the sort of baked in rules that come with shooting on film, and why then have sound on top of it later, and then on top of that have it unsynced, because I could shoot with a 16mm camera that does do sync sound, because we have those, but I don't know, it divides the viewer's attention. Like you have to sort of choose and build a new relationship, and I think it keeps sound from becoming secondary in the experience of watching the work. Like what happens when you have to, when you can't be a passive listener, you have to build a relationship between what you're hearing and what you're seeing. So that's and it's more fun to do that too. Like, can I make something obtuse, or can I put something together that maybe doesn't really feel like it could be together, other than the fact that it's been put together, is part of why I do that.
And as we're speaking about film, there is a moment in the video where the screen become just a color, like a kind of a purple, pinkish. Is that a kind of burnt film, or what is it?
That's the end and the beginning of the roll. So like when
Okay.
it flips with the colors.
Okay.
And that happens because I loaded it in light and then unloaded it in light. So it's like it's exposed film, but not exposed to an image. It's just it's been flashed. Yeah.
I'm curious about your experience of filming these Black experiences outside US. You mentioned before that you've shoot some subject matter in Germany before, and when you come here, there was also your interest to exploring that here. Would you share a little bit about those experiences too?
Yes. In Germany, I know I got lucky. The person I ended up talking to was a Afro-German woman who was the student of a friend of a professor that I had, and agreed to talk, and we spent several days texting back and forth, and she watched some of my older work and then agreed to be interviewed. And then, even sending her the draft later, because, if the people in it want it, I send them even if they don't want it, I send them a draft, they just don't have to watch it. But later I sent her her work, or the work she was featured in, and she was like, oh, this is odd, I don't remember saying any of that. Which is funny, like how that works, but that's maybe a different conversation. But as far as here, I was unsuccessful in finding anybody. I think I don't know, maybe it was because I came here searching for someone, that it didn't work. But I'll be damned if I'm in Portugal for a month and don't shoot anything and brought film with me. So on Wednesday I did a tour, which is also a little bit odd to say out loud, but a walking tour of the slave trade routes in the city, or like of significant locations in the city. And that was also eerie. There were other people on the tour who all had their different reasons for being there. And the places that we walked through were places that I'd already been here, but for shopping. And so it was strange it was strange to revisit a plaza that has no signage anywhere, and then be told later, oh, this is where they hosted the first I'll put that in quotes, maybe official or on paper, like slave auction, and there's nothing to commemorate it other than this person standing here with a book of laminated pages with painting photocopies on it. So it was a little bit strange, and the guide was really annoyed with me shooting with my camera, so I missed some of the beginning of the tour on film, so I went back, and there was a street named like Corridor of the Slaves or something, and there was a coffee shop next to it, and I asked the employee who was sitting outside if he knew what this meant, and he said no. And I also thought that was bizarre to have the history so close, to be on top of it, literally, and not know much about it. Not to like shame this dude who's just trying to go to work, but it was odd. It was surprising, I think, especially in the U.S. We're told that we don't have enough public or sort of historical shame, which we don't, about what happened and what it meant and our contribution to the slave trade, and then the aftermath of the slave trade and the results of people's lives because of it. And then for some reason, I assumed that, especially here, that there would be a bigger consciousness of what happened, because this was the beginning, or we're told it's the beginning, and there wasn't. And maybe it was just a self-selecting group. You could pick any 10 persons, I'm sure someone would have an answer. But it was bizarre. It was maybe uncomfortably similar to knowledge of, or the specifics of slavery in the U.S. So, I have that on film, and I think, you know, I don't know what it will be. It's a less individual specific story than I initially went looking for, but it doesn't make it less. It doesn't make it any less of a film. Fingers crossed the footage comes out, because it was auto exposure, so that doesn't always work. But yeah, so we'll see about that.
So you mentioned that your previous films, and just like this one, are more focused on an individual subject and their story. And would you expand on that as well, and maybe tell a little bit about different experiences you had? I would like to hear more about the German one and their story. And
so Masere, and I'm not putting the accent in there right, but so I met her at a play. It was in German and Spanish, and I don't speak either. I speak some Spanish, but I don't speak either of them well. And in the break, I asked her what was happening, because I had a free ticket from this friend of the professor of the whatever. And then she asked me what I was doing there if I didn't speak any of either of the languages. Anyways, then we started talking, and I told her what I told her what I do. Gave her my card, and she watched some work. And so she wasn't the only person I talked to. She was the only one who agreed to be on film, but she definitely wasn't the only person I talked to about being Afro-German. And you know, the footage is just of her talking. She's sitting, we're in the courtyard. I don't know what you call them what they are in German, but you have in the middle of the apartment area, there's like greenery, and then you have the trash cans and stuff. So we're sitting outside of my window, and it's just on her, and it's focusing on the stuff behind her in her hands, because she's gesticulating, and then you know, it moves up to her eyes, and she just talks about like very basic experiences of like, oh, growing up I was the only black person, or you know, my dad was black and my mom was white, but he left, so I didn't have any, and then they stayed in Germany, so you know, she didn't have any connection to this part of herself that was a mystery to her until her 20s. And then her notions about what she thought it was like to be black in the US, and I mean, we just spent a really long time. I mean, it's 3 minutes long, and you know, it's a portion of a much larger conversation we had, but I don't know, I think as far as why I have individual based interviews, or like singular people, or people at all, I guess, is I don't know, I think people are very interesting, and you know, I have a hard time, I know I've said this before, I have a hard time with like creative abstraction, and so I don't have to invent the form of people. You know, I don't have to invent her life, it's already happening. I don't have to like make up Mandela, he's a person. And so I think I enjoy that part of nonfiction work, is like I don't have to imagine the life of someone, because I can ask someone about their life, and it's already there and totally unknowable to me already. So I enjoy that part. I think it maybe relieves some of the work, but you know, why individuals and why interviews, I don't know, people are more eager to talk about themselves than I think we maybe give them credit for. And I think part of my job is just asking the right questions and asking the right people. And then what is the right person? You know, I don't know if you guys are familiar with Grey Gardens. Did you see that film with the Maisels brothers? I think it's the Maisels. It's two older women. They were like distant cousins of Jackie O, you know, Kennedy. And it was a really controversial film because they basically just documented the lives of these two women, and they live in squalor. They were rich, but they lived in squalor. Their house was filled with raccoons, and they would throw dog food at them, and they would talk shit about their other wealthy relatives, and, you know, whatever. There's trash everywhere, but they were funny, and they were interesting, and there were all kinds of articles and debates about the ethics of this film, because clearly the two women were in need of some help. They were unwell in some ways, and so the Maisels, as a part of their argument for shooting the film and publishing it was that, well, this is their life before and after we leave. Like, they will continue. We have nothing to do with sort of the conditions of their being, and they consented, and we want to respect their consent. They said yes, we could be in their house. There's obviously problems with their, with still choosing to go after you saw their lifestyle, even if they said yes. But I think, in thinking about choosing the right person to talk to, it's someone who wants to talk to you, but also there's like something about, I find something very satisfying in the deceptive simplicity of a question. What is it like to be black somewhere? And this applies to any identity-based question, because there are so many things that factor into someone's answer. So that's where a lot of these start, especially even with this film, where why are you into judo? Well, I was dealing with grief, and here's a way that like physical activity can help this person or maybe guide this person through grief. Oh, I saw someone do this thing when I was a kid, and I thought that was cool, and so now I do this professionally. What is it like to be black in Germany? Well, these are the things, how it affects my everyday, and this is how I think about myself in relation to my childhood. And even the word black, because she talks about the terminology also, because she visited the U.S. at some point. But, I think that's where that comes from. I have a lot of interviews with my mom. I have a lot of work I have one or two about my sister, and not about me directly, but, it seems impossible not for the work to reflect, what I'm thinking about or how I think about people.
Okay, maybe I'm curious what's coming after we are finishing the residency. What is coming after? Do you have some movies that you're cooking, or are you going to participate in some festival? I don't know. I'm curious about what's up.
So I'm gonna develop the stuff I shot on Wednesday, and do something with peacocks and that, because it's hard to. I've been waking up to them yelling every day for the last month, so that's really cool. So something about that. I did on that tour learn a lot about certain details about the kind of jobs that freed slaves would have, or ex-enslaved laborers would have in the city. Some of them being really not common in the U.S. So matadors, or being a matador, was apparently really I don't know about common, but it was popular. Both men and women, and then running certain kinds of shops. So I might look into black matador history out here, which I hadn't heard of any. We don't have that, but so I'll do that work. I'll develop these roles, and then I had some footage from something I did with my sister a year ago that I might cut up and do some stuff with. And then depending on if I'm not totally sick of this work, finish a more complete version of it. I wonder if there's something else I could shoot to fill it out, or maybe I need to cut more and it could be shorter, or maybe it's two separate films that I've squeezed together because they just happen to know each other. So I have some decisions to make about this work. And then as far as new stuff, the stuff I did Wednesday, and then stuff with my sister, and then there's one, I don't know if it'll be this year, but there's an artist that I love named Arthur Jaffa, and I feel like a stalker, but I've seen so many of his interviews, and in one of them he talks about, with Tina Campt, he talks about black people's ability to tell the future. And so he said anticipatory behavior is like a form of future telling. So if you do something or don't do something with the expectation of a certain consequence. He was talking about police brutality and danger, but I think this could apply to anything. Like if you're able to act in a way to avoid or increase the chances of a certain encounter, then that's a form of clairvoyance. And so I really like thinking about that. And I think maybe I'm a sportsman and don't know that, but I think there are a lot of sports that require like a sort of like small future telling, like especially in soccer, or I guess since I'm in Europe, it's football. You know, you have to anticipate where a ball is going, and like, so what's an action that sort of implies like small forms of future telling. And then I have a friend who, she's gonna be mad I mentioned it, but I have a friend who tells me that she has dreams that predict the future. So I'm gonna get her to tell me one of her dreams, and so have her talk about this dream, and then maybe someone playing soccer, something like that. Ooh, but that's maybe like a year away, because I don't know any place in soccer, but I'll find someone. I think it'll be easier than finding a black person here to tell me about what is it like to live here. But yeah, that's in the future. I have a list. I have a lot to get through.
Okay, then maybe we release you. Thank you a lot for
Thank you so
sharing,
much.
Paige.
Thank you.